Hello fellow baggers and welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge. Remember to lob us a like and subscribe to help us reach 1K subscribers, which we are just 4 subscribers away from. So again, thank you so much for your support in advance. And for those that have subscribed already, we love you. And just a heads up as well, also, we are now available in audio podcast format. So if that's your preferred platform to consume content, you can do so via Apple Pods, Spotify, and the like. But let's get into it. Of course, we are here to recap the national draft across both nights and on draft night 1 that came and went. And once again, we will get to see the famous Dean name lining up in defence at Carlton, with West Coast bidding on Harry Dean at pick 3, which the club swiftly matched. The one upside to having Dean bid on so early, must be said, is that we didn't have to wait through the ridiculous drawn-out broadcast of the national draft. It was slow, monotonous, doing interviews, which I understand on the first night. Second night, it was no excuse really. But it was just, they try and make it like a whole spectacle, like the NFL draft, classic AFL, trying to emulate the American game. But it just was ridiculous. But anyway, as we discussed in our previous video, sensing the Eagles' bid was going to drop at that pick 2, the club traded pick 9 and pick 43 to Essendon for pick 21, 27 and 30, while switching pick 11 and pick 54 to North in exchange for 25 and 46, along with the 2026 round 2 pick. Now that allowed us to match the bid on Dean and also potentially match a bid on Jack Ison if need be. Now it was going to happen at some stage and just we didn't know as to where it was going to land. Now with regards to Harry Dean, we spoke about him at length in our previous video on him and Jack Ison, where they nominated themselves as father, son, and academy picks. But for those of you who are uninitiated, Dean is hands down the best tall defender in the draft and a brilliant interceptor defender at that, who will complement Weeders absolutely perfectly. Weeders, we all know, he's a great lockdown defender. Not so much an intercept defender, but lockdown has the size about him and can shut down key forwards. Now, Dean, he's going to be perfect, drifting across, guarding space, all that sort of stuff. And with him, he has a very, very high footy IQ and has the smarts to assess every contest, knowing when to spoil, when to mark, and when to drift into space to intercept. He'll fill a hole that we've been looking to fill for a long, long time. And with that, I'm very excited. Heading into night 2 of the draft, we did sit in a very interesting spot. Now, Cal Toomey floated the potential of Geelong bidding on Ison at pick 22 in night 1, but that never eventuated. So with pick 28, we had a couple of options. We could have just used it as an opportunity to get one of the great options still on the board, or as it transpired, and what I thought we were going to do as well, with North Melbourne and the Dogs not bidding on Ison, with the first 2 picks of the night 2 of the draft, with picks 26 and 27, we ended up trading pick 28 to squeeze a 2026 second rounder out of Gold Coast, which I think was very, very smart. Now, we have to remember as well, in context of this, of course, that we have Cody Walker, who could get bid on in the first 2 picks in next year's draft. And as we know, the incompetent AFL still hasn't got their shit together and worked out how they are changing the rules heading into 2026 with regards to matching bids. So it's a bit hard to assess, but the expectation is broadly that they're going to restrict it in some way, and potentially in terms of the ability to only match bids with only 2 picks. So we would need to stockpile as many picks, or more suitably draft points in this case, as possible in order to trade up the order for higher picks if need be. And so from there, after that, after trading pick 28, we sat back and waited to see if Ison was bid on before our next pick at pick 38, and continued dangling picks to opposition clubs for more 2026 picks until we were forced to match a bid on Ison. So as it turned out, we traded pick 38 to the Lions for pick 50 and their 2026 round 3 pick, because of course the bid didn't come for Jack Ison, but it did eventually at pick 47, which we promptly matched. In essence, we came away with a 2026 second rounder and a 2026 third rounder in exchange for sliding back down the order when we expected to take Ison much earlier anyway. And those picks that we traded in the end would have been dissolved in that match bid. So we're virtually able to manufacture these 2 2026 picks out of nothing. So it was very, very smart tactics, I do believe. Now, the other side of looking at things with regards to stockpiling draft picks for next year aside from matching bids on Walker, of course, is, now dare we say it, compiling huge draft capital in order to make a play for Zach Butters in 2026 as a potentially free agent. But the expectation is that Port will match a free agent play on Butters and force an opposition club to make a trade for him. So in that case, it's, I think, smart of us to have picks at the ready. Imagine getting Butters and being able to match a bid on Walker in the 2026 trade and draft period. Like, that would be probably hands down our best trade and draft period in the club's history. So I really don't mind it. It's a smart move, and we've got to continue to dream, I think. I know it sounds like pie in the sky type stuff, and it probably is if we're going to be realistic about things, but we've laid the foundations. We've got Travis Boak at the club, obviously got Michael Voss as head coach, and Chris Davies, all with Port Adelaide links, of course. So why not just dream? Why not just believe? The other reality is in the fact that, in all likelihood, our first two rounders will get absorbed in a top 2 bid on Cody Walker next year. So having excess round 2 picks allows us to trade up back into the first round to have, I guess you would call it a live pick after we get Walker once we match that bid on him. So to me, that is astute trading. Either scenario there, having a crack at Butters. If that fails, well, we can go and have a crack at some top tier talent in next year's draft to add alongside, of course, Harry Dean in this year's draft and Cody Walker next year. And not forgetting, of course, Jagger Smith in last year's draft as well. As for our third player taken in the draft, we ended up selecting Tyler Byrne at pick 45, an almost like-for-like replacement for Corey Durden. Now, I say that because Byrne stands at 174 centimetres, whilst Durden 173 centimetres. Of course, he is a small forward as well, an exciting one at that. He's been described as with game-breaking traits, having been named in the Coates Talent League Team of the Year. Now, he put his name up in lights with a 5-goal haul against Vic Metro in the National Champs and took out the Rebels best and fairest as well. Now, personally, I don't want to, this is no knock on him as a player, but just from a list perspective, which I'll chat about in a moment, I'm just a little bit unsure that we need another small forward. We've obviously acquired Ainsworth from the Suns, and we have a plethora of other small forwards, as we know. And it was kind of one of my gripes across 2025 in terms of the way our forward line was structured. I think a lot of the time it was too small. It kind of worked at various stages against particular opponents based upon matchups. But by and large, I think, especially now in the context that we don't have Charlie at the club anymore, is we needed to look at a taller forward. And one that kind of came to mind around about that mark was Cody Curtin, the brother of Dan Curtin, or even Archie Ludowick from South Australia, who the Crows ended up taking, who I thought would have been a bit of a nice selection, bit of a slider, I think, at that, but it wasn't to be. Now, this leads me to my, overall assessment of the draft, and I really do applaud the tactics of Austin and the recruiting team, as I said, to bring in those additional 2026 round 2 and round 3 picks, just smart trading, manufacturing picks from nothing, and it's left us in a great spot for next year to match bids on Cody, as mentioned, but otherwise use as trade collateral for a Butters move or trading back into the first round, as I spoke about. Here's what Chris Davies had to say.
Obviously tonight to bring in a future second round pick, a future third round pick, great outcome for the club for the future. Obviously we've got Cody Walker coming into the club next year, so we've got to be mindful of having enough points next year, and so Nick and the other guys here have done a really good job tonight to flesh out those future picks.
Now, the question I do have is, I'm still concerned about us not having added to our key position forward depth. And this fascination with small forwards continues instead. But the only logical thing that I can think about is knowing that we have the mid-season rookie draft, of course, as a fallback that we can use as our saving grace if, God forbid, knock on wood, injuries strike our talls and especially tall forwards, which has happened in recent seasons, as we know. So that's kind of why I'm reiterating this move, because we've seen when we have key players of our tall stocks go down, it hurts us more often than not, and we're having to plug holes and play guys in positions that they aren't accustomed to. We've had to throw, Kempy forward, which I think is probably a good thing. It's unlocked a bit of, versatility in his game, which he's always had at junior level. But I just think we shouldn't need to be doing that and have guys at the ready if we have injuries hit. And it's why I'm still annoyed that we gave a SSP spot to Will White instead of the 198 centimeters Liam McMahon, who is a known commodity from our VFL program. And having said that, as much as I love Whitey, I think is probably unlucky to be, he hasn't been cut completely yet. He's still a train-on player. But I just think looking back, it's a bit of a waste because even then, when we went for Frankie Evans as well, I was kind of like, what are we going for another small forward? And then we've gone for Will White. And it's kind of like throwing as many darts as you can at the dart board and hoping one hits the bullseye. It's kind of a case of that for me, and not being smart about just trying to build depth on your list. And I know we're getting there and, whatnot, but it's just one of those things, I think, especially Liam McMahon being a mature age player and whatnot. But, we've spoken about that, and he's now an Essendon player, and they will get the fruits of what he's able to provide. And he showed some promising signs, must be said, playing in the red and black. But from a pure, I think, list balance perspective, I will scratch my head, just wondering why we went down that route. Anyway, all in all, I reckon that we did very, very well considering the early bid on Dean. It kind of was cropped up a little bit late. There's whispers that it may happen, and I thought, surely not. And it's come to fruition. And our ability to manufacture those additional 2026 picks from other clubs was a real feather in the cap, I think, of Austin and the recruiting team. Now, Ison is going to add some much-needed foot skills as an exciting talent, and keen to see if Byrne as well can become a bolter amongst our sea of small forwards on the list. What about you? How do you assess our performance at the draft? Let us know in the comment section down below, and don't forget to give us a like and subscribe if you are enjoying our content, if you are watching us on YouTube, of course, and a podcast rating if you're listening to us in the new audio podcast format. So thank you again for tuning in. Really do appreciate your company throughout the off-season thus far, across the trade period and across the draft period. Until next time, we'll see you in the next one. Go Baggers.
Have you ever heard the MCG